In episode 5, we get into another suspect, Jimmy Burnett. And the reason the police keyed in on Jimmy is a little bit similar to Schaefer in that his name pops up with a lot of the other teens that are interviewed. You know, when the police start looking into him, it's really more some pointed things some people say about what Jimmy told them about his possible involvement in the case, one of which was from his girlfriend.
Right. So his ex-girlfriend was really reluctant to talk, and you did a good job finding her. And then she finally agreed to talk to me alone with no recording. And she really had incredibly interesting things to say. The thing that really struck me is she truly believes Jimmy is involved, and she's still terrified to this day. And she was shaking the whole time we talked. She cried. It made me cry. It was really an emotional conversation that really brought home the reality of how horrible this crime was and how it still is in that town. We were able to access the polygraph that Lieutenant Lowe and, some local police department were able to do in 2014, I believe. So it had been a good while after the murders, but the sheriff, David Jones, at the time of the murders was able to talk to her too, and her polygraph was consistent with her report with David Jones, so she stayed consistent there. She didn't go to the fireworks. She said Jimmy went to the fireworks that night of July 4th.
And then the next morning, he came in and said he had been hunting and asked me to take the truck to the car wash and wash it. And I did, and there was blood in the back of the pickup.
And then later on, it was a very volatile relationship, it sounds like. There was a lot of abuse, I would say. As she was trying to leave the relationship, Jimmy put her in a truck, according to her, took her to the place where he said Shane and Sally died, showed her pictures of bodies, and told her that was going to happen to her also.
He opened the glove box, got these pictures out, and he said, "Look at them." And I looked at him, I said, "Well, what are they?" And he told me it was Sally and Shane.
So in her opinion, he confessed and showed her proof. And then she said he burned the photos.
There was a little bit of inconsistency in the descriptions of the photos, but nevertheless a startling thing. And one of the things that we really wondered about at the time was, when they first got this information, which was, shortly after the bodies were found, why didn't they search Jimmy Burnett's apartment and his truck? And today's, current investigators aren't sure. But they said a lot of it could be because the police felt that a lot of these witnesses were shaky, unreliable. But you didn't get that sense so much with his girlfriend, so it's a mystery why they didn't search it.
Jimmy Burnett, he's faked his death twice. He's tried to fake his death twice, and we've tried to get help from the FBI identifying him and getting him brought over.
Yeah, one of the main suspects doesn't live in the United States anymore. I would love to talk to him.
We'd learned from Lieutenant Lowe that they believe Jimmy faked his death twice and that he lived somewhere else. And when we originally talked to him, he finally told us, well, we think he's in the Philippines, but he might as well be on the moon. We can't find him. So, of course, we were like, we'll find him.
We were intent on not letting the distance across the Pacific Ocean being an impediment for us trying to talk to Jimmy Burnett. It obviously was an impediment for the San Angelo Sheriff's Office because they were thinking, money, how are we going to do this? We can't just, buy a ticket and fly over. We thought we could, but the obstacle was that I thought there was just a couple hundred islands in the Philippines. There's thousands of islands, and he could have been anywhere.
Luckily, we were able to hire Gil.
Good morning to you guys.
Someone who helps journalists in a foreign country and an investigator. She was facing the same kind of challenge in that we didn't have a clue initially where Jimmy was in the Philippines. But after asking for more and more from Sheriff Hanna, he said, well, I do have a driver's license application that Jimmy filled out to get a license in the Philippines in Manila. And we're like, bingo. It had an address on it, but the address was incomplete.
One of her tactics was talking to the taxi drivers because they just know the locals. They kind of know people's patterns. That actually worked for her. She talked to a store owner who knew Jimmy, knew his wife. Like, that store owner helped a lot and then connected her to his ex-wife.
We located her in the States now, talked to her. She did not know, you'll hear in the podcast, she didn't know anything about Shane and Sally, but she described her turmoil life with Jimmy and his eventual demise, drinking himself to death. He died at age 43 with cirrhosis of the liver.
We barely missed him.
You know, just to kind of see it on that colorful piece of paper that was official was kind of like a blow because of, you know, you start thinking about all the days and days and days and days of trying to find people that knew him and relatives and digging through records and calling court clerks all around the country and, yeah. And
then when we let Hannah know, his response was, have you seen the body?
Right.
Which is a legit question. But we do have the ex-wife saying she saw the body and she knows where he's buried.
Correct.
Plus the death certificate, so
yeah,
it's probably real.
One thing that's not in the podcast that's kind of interesting is that they still have all of Jimmy's possessions, his ex-wife and her new husband, in a house back in the Philippines. I'm super curious about one item, which is that one short-term girlfriend at the time said he always wore a thumb drive on a chain around his neck. And do you know anyone else that would wear a thumb drive?
No, but I also can't imagine what Jimmy would be keeping on that.
Well, yeah, that's the question.
Like, why? What
makes me super
would
curious.
It be?
Yeah. So I don't know if that thumb drive is sitting somewhere in a box in the Philippines.
Someone please help us find the thumb drive.
Yeah.